Hi, folks. Let's talk about picking the name for your business and that first step of getting your logo made. One of the most important things is you've got to make sure the domain that you want is available. Stack the deck in your favor. Don't go with a company name if the domain isn't available, or with a domain that's very similar to another company where you're going to have to fight an uphill battle to differentiate yourself when it comes to both the domain as well as search engine optimization. In other words, when people Google your company name, you want to make sure they find you. If social media like Instagram or YouTube or Facebook or Twitter are going to be important to your business, make sure you can get those handles as well. We prefer names that are short and sweet. If your name is unnecessarily long, it's more difficult to explain it to somebody. It's more difficult for them to remember it. It's longer for them to type it in if they have to send you an email. Saunders Machine Works works pretty well. Most people understand that, and most people are able to know what I meant. When it comes to your logo, less is more. Let's take a look at some examples. This was a logo for one of my first companies, and this was our fourth logo over the history of this company, and it was one of the simplest versions. What I like about it, very few colors. It has a font and what they call iconography that stands out. We were able to use this A character on its own in certain instances, and it met two of my rules with logo design that are so important. One, it needs to be able to be embroidered on a shirt. And that's not because I actually like embroidered shirts. It has to do with just making sure the logo isn't overly complex. The second rule is you should be able to print the logo out on a printer and then photocopy it 10 times, making sure that each time that logo degrades a little bit with each photocopy, it still looks good. Again, the point is making sure you don't have something that's too complex. Having colors is okay, but colors gets expensive. It's easy to design things that look great on monitors, but when you go to buy things like custom tapes or packaging or boxes, it can really add up. So where do you go to get that logo first designed? Here are a few options. We've used LogoWorks as well as 99 Designs. These are both great websites where you'll spend approximately $300 to $500, but you'll get numerous versions back with either unlimited or significant numbers of revisions. We've used this process extensively when we just don't know what we're looking for. We're not particularly creative, so it's helpful to leverage artists and logo designers and graphics designers to help us get some ideas. If that sounds like it's too much money for you right now, here are a couple of other options. Either Upwork.com or Fiverr. If you go to the NYC CNC library and type Upwork, we've got a video walking through how we use both Fiverr and Upwork for various services in our entrepreneurial pursuits. But it can be a great way to get a relatively low cost, lower quality logo, but it gets you going. Here's a great example of that. When we started Freedom Huddle, we spent about $30 to get this logo made up. We were pretty happy. It looked pretty cool relative to something that I could have made. However, when it was time to take the next step, we took the $30 that we spent to get this logo. We reached out to a real graphics designer on one of the other websites like 99 Designs or LogoWorks. We included this image and we talked more about what we wanted out of that logo. And they came up with this. Now compare those two. This is not a terrible logo. You can see what we needed to in this instance, the eagle, the Humvee, the logo, the flag, but this is a world-class graphics design. Now, I violated some of our own advice here. It's got too many colors, it's too complex, it wouldn't be able to be photocopied, but nevertheless, a really good example of how you can start small, and our work with the final revision of the logo was easier to accomplish because we had front-loaded some of that on the basic version. The Saunders Machine Works logo, I was so happy with how this logo turned out, and it does meet the criteria of keeping it simple, being elegant. How did we come up with this? We had spent about a year trying to capture a screenshot or picture of every logo that we liked that stood out. And we sent to our graphics designer this slide of these older machine tool companies or other companies where they just stood out. We just liked what we saw. That first iteration of logos was all over the place. Here was one version, another, and so forth. But here's what I find. Even folks that aren't creative, of which I consider myself not very creative, oftentimes we're able to react. And as soon as I saw this one, I thought, hey, we're getting close. I don't like the triangle, but you can now start to see how we iterated through and ended up with a logo that I was really happy with. Last example, The Business of Machining, the podcast that John Grimsmo and I run. This is a logo that's still in its first stage. We started the podcast a little less than a year ago, but upgrading the logo just hasn't been important to us. We needed a logo, so we did this one on Fiverr. We literally searched for podcast logo, and I think in the end we spent between $20 and $30 to get the version done with a couple of iterations and the final formats. Eventually, we need to upgrade this logo. We need to make it look a little bit better. Now, in this case, it's not something that I'll likely put on a business card or embroider on a shirt or put on a product that we're packaging, so I'm less sensitive about some of those rules with detail and color. But nevertheless, it is good to think about, what does this logo look like when it's only a thumbnail, meaning it only is about 1 inch by 1 inch on someone's screen or iPhone.